and welcome to the A to Z Sports Big Orange Podcast. I am Charlie Burris. That is Zach Reed. And wherever you listen throughout the world, thank you very much for listening to us. Zach and I talk everything Vols every week here on the Big Orange Podcast. If you want to listen to that on the regular, go over to the A to Z Sports Podcast network feed on Apple or Spotify, or you can just type in Big Orange Podcast. There's nothing. But find us there. When you get there, rate, review, but you got to subscribe. If you do subscribe, you won't miss our shows when we drop them on Mondays. Speaking of Monday, it is one right now at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Usually we're at 6, sometimes 7. It kind of depends. Zach had something to do before this, so here we are. But it doesn't matter what time it is if you subscribe. These will get them right to your feed there. But you can also go to YouTube. A to Z Sports Tennessee Volunteers on YouTube. And then if you hit the notification bell on YouTube, you'll be notified when we go live. You can come hang out with us and be a part of the show. It's the coolest thing we got going. Love going back and forth with everybody. It's always a great time every week. So do that. A to Z, at A to Z Sports, at Charlie_Burris, at Zach TNT. Facebook.com, A to Z Sports, Nashville, and AtoZSports.com for everything. Zach writes on there. Kind of poor planning on our part, Zach. You had a conflict that pushed us back an hour, and I didn't think about it. No big deal. It's just we're exactly crossing over with the biggest game of the regular season for the Lady Vols. So apologies. They're playing South Carolina in Thompson Bowling tonight, and I will not call it by that grocery store name. I refuse. I won't even give them the dignity of saying what it's supposed to be called.
You hear more and more people using that term. It's just kind of disheartening.
Not me. Thompson Bowling Arena. The Summit. It's the Summit at most. The Summit was post Thompson Bowling Arena. I will not do it. But that's a huge, huge, huge game. And they've been getting so close to beating big teams. Very nearly beat LSU. They're just coming just short in all these big games. And they lost kind of a not great game to Vandy, but maybe tonight's the night for the Lady Vols. We'll see. Maybe it sounds silly at the beginning of our show and people re-listen to this tomorrow. But anywho, what is up, Zach?
Not a whole lot, but yeah, that's a huge one for sure. You get a win against South Carolina, that would be monumental. The Lady Vols kind of remind me a little bit of Josh Heupel's first year. Fun,
yes,
lots of scoring. Unexpected. Well, not really unexpected. You just didn't know what to expect coming in with a new hire, mostly an unknown. So it's been fun. And then, Kim Caldwell having a baby and then getting back into action that quickly.
It's pretty crazy.
To me. Yeah. I don't understand that obviously because, anatomy, but that's just insane to me. That's wild.
She had a baby, Friday? I think
it was week. I think it might have been earlier in the week. That's just when the announcement was made, something like that. Yeah. Oh, either way, yeah. That doesn't take away from that.
Yeah, and Jenna Burdett, her assistant coach, took over for that Texas game in Tennessee. So near. If that game's in Thompson Bowling, I think the Lady Vols win that game. It was frustrating, but it was in Austin. And they just barely come up short against Texas. So close, which would have been huge. I mean, that would have been a top 10 win. Like I said, came up short in that LSU game tonight. Huge opportunity. Let's see how it's going. 4-2 Tennessee, baby. Upset alert. South Carolina. It's time. 3 minutes in, up by 2 points. Big time. But tonight on the show, we are going to start, obviously, little Lady Vols there for you. But we're going to talk about what happened with the men's team at Auburn. And specifically, I put it in the title here. Can Tennessee be elite this year? Because I think that's sort of the debate that people are having after that game. Like, okay, you had Auburn in that game. They hit a 3 to have to beat you, or else you would have won that game. And, is Tennessee that team? Want to talk about that up front. And then some recruiting news. You lost a 4-star recruit in football today, and we're going to have to talk about that. And I told you before we got on here, Zach, I kind of want to talk about, Danny White's really hanging his hat on being an everything school, but in the age of NIL, is that genuinely realistic? I want to kind of take a look at that too. So that's going to be the show tonight. We'll talk about all of it right after I tell you about the good folks at Zen Sports. Time is running low for you to join in on the Zen Sports VIP Players Club sweepstakes for January. This month, one grand prize winner will win a $10,000 bonus bet on the NFL big game and $10,000 cash, or an alternative prize of $15,000 cash. So you have the ability to earn entries on every bet you place in January and every dollar you wager. Plus, you earn 10 times the entries on all parlay bets. It doesn't get any better. And if you don't win that grand prize, you'll also have a shot at one of 5 smaller prizes that could grant you a $1,000 bonus bet, or a $1,000 bonus bet on the NFL big game, or $250 cash. Also, for new customers, you can sign up with code A2ZTN, ATOZTN, and you'll receive 500 entries in addition to all the entries that you earn through your play. What are you waiting for? Go to zensports.com/sweepstakes for a full list of rules, and you can even earn that $100 no danger first wager that we've been talking to you about all season long. Zen Sports. Betting just got better. If you have a gambling problem, 1-800-889-9789. No danger wager, limited to plus 500 odds. So qualified terms and conditions apply. Qualifying wager for a wager entry must have minimum odds of any leg of at least minus 250 or worse. American odds for clarity minus 251 does not qualify. A qualifying wager for a wager entry must be a minimum of $5. Head to zensports.com/sweepstakes for terms and conditions. Must be 21 or older in Tennessee to bet. Shout out to Zen Sports. Go get in on the action with that sweepstakes. Okay. So Tennessee goes to Auburn, and this game was painful in the moment because you thought you had them. First of all, you're up by 2 going in. I think Tennessee was up by 2 all the way down to like 40 seconds to play. I think that's about when Auburn hit that 3.
Mm-hmm.
But you really feel like Auburn could not throw a pea in the ocean. You're playing unbelievable defense. I mean, that's the most elite defense you'll see all season, is what Tennessee did on Saturday. I mean, it was the top level of defense in college basketball. And you've locked them down that entire time. You shut down Janai Broome. He gets the ball back from missing a shot, finds a guy on the perimeter, and that's the 3 that takes the lead over you that ultimately wins them the game. It made me absolutely ill. There were questionable calls at the end too with the refs. I just hate, you were never going to get a favorable whistle in Auburn's building. That was never going to happen. Refereeing in college basketball absolutely sucks. Those refs also sucked. Not to give Auburn too much credit, but those refs sucked both ways too in that game. And so it was just so frustrating. I wanted to be Bruce so badly. I know some people hang on to Bruce like he's just a beautiful memory in the past. I could not care less about Bruce. I don't want him back. I don't ever want him to come back to Tennessee. I don't care if you love him, if you want him to be your father. I don't really care. I don't want Bruce back. I respect the guy, obviously, but go away, stay away. You're there now. We're here. Tennessee beat Auburn last year, and you lose to them tonight. But what I will ask you, Zach, I mean, Auburn's number 1 team in America, and the talking points have been like, these guys are unbeatable. They're so good. Their only loss is to Duke, and oh my gosh. And Tennessee goes in and nearly steals it from him. Janai Broome played. Like 30 minutes. Like he played a ton. That whole fake out by Bruce of, we don't know if he'll actually play, but he was their leading scorer. I mean, he was the guy for them. Does this make Tennessee, to you, look like a true contender?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that was there for a little while. It looked like it was going to be like an incredible win for Tennessee, right? Like you just make that kind of run at the end, and look, if a couple things go your way, if a call, the Akpar travel, if that's called a foul, if the Ziegler shot at the end goes down, I mean, there's just a few things that tip that game in Auburn's favor. If you control the offensive board, prevent some offensive rebounds there at the end, close to the end of the game. You're on the road. I thought they handled the road environment pretty well. Like you said, Tennessee played incredible defense. Auburn played really good defense too. They have great length. They get their hands in passing lanes. Like a lot of what Tennessee was running offensively was good stuff. And there were passing lanes there, but they just closed so quickly. Saw a couple of turnovers trying to make some plays there. So, You really just have to credit the way Auburn played defensively. There wasn't much there, and that's kind of where you miss that Dalton Connect, scoring threat at any time. I think if you have that, just have somebody you can count on. Like Ziegler made some tough baskets, like driving to the hoop late in the game, where it's like, how did he even find a way? And it's tough for him to do that just because of the size, right? I mean, there's only so much you can do when you are his height, but he made a couple of key layups there driving to the basket, but you need somebody that can really get to the rim and create in those moments where it's just no the passing lanes are shut off. Auburn's out on everything. You're not getting open looks. You got to have somebody that can create. And even without that, you lose by 2 points. You have a chance at the end. That's just one of those games that they play again, that same style at Tennessee. Maybe a couple things go your way and you pull it out, and the conversation's a lot different that you're having. So I think they're an elite team, but I don't think they're like, oh, yeah, we should feel like this team's going to go make a run to the championship. If they do, they do. But they can. But they're going to have some things go their way because they don't have that elite scorer that can create, that you really have to have, it feels like, in March these days. If you don't have that, it's really tough to overcome that. I mean, you got to have a guy that's just on that night. And, Chaz Lanier is as good as he's been a really good transfer pickup, right? Like probably as good as you could have went out and got from the portal. And I think he's been huge for Tennessee, but he's just not going to be that Dalton Connect type scorer. And I think like at the end of the game, I know we talked about it some over text and everybody has a feeling on it, but the shot for Ziegler at the end, you can question that, but I feel like the thought was Lanier's not going to be able to create his own shot because they think they're going to him, right? So we think we can get Ziegler a good look, and they did. I mean, the shot almost went down. It wasn't a bad shot. You had time, hopefully, to get an offensive rebound. It didn't work out. It just didn't work out, that play. But it very easily could have. I didn't think it was a terrible play. I thought the worst part that Barnes had in that game was when he didn't call timeout. I guess it was the possession before, and Milicic drove to the rim and missed the layup. That was.
I didn't like that play.
I'm guessing Rick's thought was he didn't want to give Auburn a chance to set up a defense and to really get into a half court situation that favors Auburn at that point. He wanted to try to get something, but that's just not the shot. I mean, you can't. Milicic, I don't know your thoughts on him, but it seemed like, as we were praising his rebounding and all that, he had 2 rebounds in this game, and then 1 for 6 or something like that from the field. So it's just not the guy you want to count on in that moment, I thought. But outside of that, just a couple things didn't go your way, and that's why you lost the game.
Yeah, Milicic is not the guy that I would have gone to there. If anything, give it to Chaz again because he had made a couple shots down the stretch. Huge block by Akpara that Zakai turns around, finds Lanier on the 3-point line. They make it. That was the moment. That 3 that Lanier made late in that game is where I went, oh, Tennessee might win this.
Yeah.
Like this is going to get real quick for Auburn because like Tennessee just had a little funk with them that night. Like they just were not playing around. And the type of defense that they showed up with could beat anybody any night, period. I don't care who you are. You just played the team, supposedly. I'm still not totally sold. They're very, very good. Like, make absolutely no mistake about that, especially that freshman guard that they got, the Pettiford. Yeah. That dude, by the end of the season, he's going to be a complete dog. And they got Janai Broom, who's, he's not going to win the Wooden Award because of the guy at Duke, but he's going to come close. And, they're a really special team. But Tennessee, with that defense, like I tweeted this during the game, Jemai Mashak is made for that spot. I think he feeds off an away crowd, and it just makes him lock in even more on defense. He did nearly the same thing last year at Alabama. Now, that game you ended up winning, but he made a couple shots. He played incredible defense and locked down one of their best guys. And like I said, the Alabama game you won. This one you didn't. You win some, you lose some. But ultimately, this doesn't have a whole lot of bearing on the season. I know a lot of people are kind of, oh, you would have been a 1 seed. You would have. Florida's still ahead of you. I think they probably would have, and they didn't lose this weekend. They probably would have been bolstered up there on that one line, at least for now. That being said, you would have had the opportunity when you play Florida this week, and it's at Thompson Bowling Arena, when you play them. Now, if you got all the way through Kentucky and Florida this week, you're on the one line. Also, if you get through Kentucky and Florida this week, especially if you look impressive, you're going to be really close to the one line regardless.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't count that out completely. I don't think that this team's going to end up being a 1 seed, and frankly,
It's not
that never felt like it was in the cards to me.
Anyway, I mean, you can 2 seeds win championships. I mean, it's not that crazy.
It's all about draw.
Yeah, and you're gonna have to be good. Look, you're gonna have to be good teams. Period. And we know Tennessee's luck. They'll run into the miracle team that gets hot right near the end, and they're gonna have to find a way to beat them, whoever that ends up being. So the seeding, as long as you're in one of those top couple of handful of seeds, 1, 2, 3 spot, I feel like you're gonna have a decent chance to have an okay draw.
And you were already 2 games back in the SEC race going into that game, and frankly, the SEC race in the regular season, fun, definitely fun. I like getting a T-shirt and a ring and a trophy. You won it last year, and then you went into the SEC tournament against Mississippi State, and you got drilled.
Yeah,
in that game. So, that one, I know a lot of people like both of those things a lot. That the 1 seed really mattered. Tennessee's never been a 1 seed, so you really want to see that happen. I really want to see that happen. But like I said, I have never felt in this season like Tennessee is probably going to be a 1 seed. So maybe I'm just being, a downer about it. But I'm not losing sleep over either of those things. You still have a chance at a 1 line if you take care of your business.
Yeah, and it depends on what else happens too. There's a lot of other scenarios that play out down the stretch here with other teams.
Absolutely. But there's a lot to this team. Like Victor Lockwood in the comments, he says, we have no scoring presence in the paint like last season. Until we have a go-to down low, we won't win a regional. It is true you don't have a scorer in the paint, but Felix Okpara is the best dude that you've had in a minute, in my opinion. I think he's better than they do, and his defense is really exciting. He is obviously incredibly lengthy, but just some of those plays that he made against Janai Broome in that game were, they were elite plays. Like that's an excellent basketball player. He struggles to score the basketball. That's 100% true, and that's tough. But even then, to be a truly difference-making big, you got to be able to make like a 15-footer.
Yeah.
And that's so rare in college basketball. It's rare in the NBA. I mean, if you're that guy, you're automatically like shooting up the draft board in the NBA.
Yeah.
So
Anthony Davis a while to develop that.
Yeah. I mean, that is not easy. And you're not wrong. That's definitely not wrong, Victor. But I that's another thing where I think you can do it regardless. Chaz has to continue stepping up. Cade Phillips is playing his butt off. I love that coming off the bench. Get more quality play out of Darlington Dubar. Keep letting him get better. He's still, it's like he's either playing well or he's a liability out there. It can never be just in the middle, it seems like. But you got a lot going for you. And if you're going to play defense at that level, you could beat absolutely anybody, especially in the SEC. And so, keep your head down. This week is huge. Kentucky tomorrow, go beat the brakes off these boys. You're better. They're better than Kentucky. Kentucky, if you can chase them off the 3-point line and they can't make a shot from the perimeter, it's over. They will not beat you. So I'm hopeful in that one, unless Tennessee just gassed itself on Saturday. And maybe they did, and they come out flat. I hope not. But I do think that's a distinct possibility. But there's a lot there for Tennessee to take as long as they can stay healthy across the board. That's so key. They're hanging on by a thread depth-wise. You're getting great play out of Cade Phillips when he comes in. He plays so hard. But I like it. I think it's a bit of a long shot. I mean, Elias says Tennessee's good enough to do it, but they're not going to just walk through anyone after the round of 32. And then he follows that up, says even the round of 32 could be iffy if the opponent gets hot. I agree with exactly that. Could Tennessee, looking at the rest of college basketball, and I watched a good amount as I always do, looking at the rest of college basketball, could Tennessee beat literally anybody on any given night and make a run in the postseason? 100% this team has Final Four ability. But will they actually go out there and do it? That's been the thing with Barnes the entire time. Last year was good enough to make you to the Elite Eight. This year, I mean, it can that defense can carry you. Look at Tony Bennett's teams at Virginia. You know, it can happen, but that's it's not easy. We'll see.
Yeah, and hopefully with Lanier, you know, there's comments. Mr. Jones says, you know, Chaz needs to be more consistent in conference games. It's still a big jump, you know, coming from where he came from, and you've just got to hope. I mean, he's a good player, obviously, that playing in these games, playing at Auburn, playing at Florida earlier this year. I mean, that's invaluable experience that, you know, by the time he gets to the tournament, he's going to be through this gauntlet of the SEC and playing in some of these road environments and these tough games. Maybe the confidence gets up. You know, Dalton Connect was just so rare in the fact that he transferred into the SEC, and it's like nobody ever told him, hey, you got to prove yourself here in the SEC. He was just like, I'm just as good as anyone, and he believed that from day one, and he never wavered from that. Had an off night, off half, whatever. Not everybody's going to be that same mindset. That's not, you know, it is what it is. You just got to hope from here that Lanier, all this experience that he's gained through this tough month here in January, and it's really tough games, some tough games to come. The SEC tournament coming up too. That could be huge, and maybe he's a completely different player when you get into the tournament, and he's what carries you. I mean, I think that can still happen. You know, you just got to go out and do it. He's
the type of guy that could, where you watch his potential and you go, if this guy turns it on 3 games in a row, and we've watched him play great games in successive contests. I mean, if he can do that, you are an elite team when he plays the top end of his ability. When all these guys are cooking, when a guy is having a great game, when Chaz is having a great game, when Akbar is playing a great game, when Jemai Meshack is locked in defensively. I mean, this is a top 5 basketball team in America. It's putting all those pieces together. It's tough. You do have, if you can get through this week unscathed, home game against Kentucky, home game against Florida, you're going to be favored in both of those. I think Tennessee's a 9-point favorite against Kentucky tomorrow, which is kind of crazy. But probably right when you really think about it. I mean, it's number 1 perimeter defense in America against a team that kind of lives and dies by the 3 with the style that Pope runs there. I could see if you play defense like you did against Auburn, they're going to blow Kentucky out of the gym. They are. But if you don't, again, if you're zapped and you don't come out with fire, they'll get you. Kentucky will absolutely get you. So they just lost at Vandy, and so did Tennessee. So kind of both wounded in that way. We'll see who prevails. But if you can get through there, you got Missouri at home. That should be a win. At Oklahoma, they're one of the worst teams in the SEC. Should be a win. At Kentucky, Vanderbilt at home. Like you got some favorable spots where you could maybe go 5-1 in your next 6, and you're sitting nice again, giving yourself a chance at maybe that 1 seed. And I think this season's kind of all you can ask, because I'm not sure that they're the upper crust of the upper crust, but they are right there if they can capitalize in all the ways that they have the ability to. So
weirdly, it's kind of like last year, and I remember we talked about this last year, and then it actually happened. You referenced it earlier, the Mississippi State loss in the SEC tournament. You've talked a lot throughout this season about the depth that Tennessee's missing, and how this is one of those things where, no, you don't want to go lose in the SEC tournament, right? Like that's never, ever going to be the goal. You want to go there and win the thing, because at the end of the day, if that's what comes out of this season, then, you know, that's always fun to have an SEC tournament championship. But if you do lose early, at least you get some time there to rest going into to March, because this team, you've said, the depth is going to be tested. A lot of minutes being played at this point. You know, Ziegler playing a lot of minutes. You're going to need some fresh legs in March. It's a long season, so every little bit of rest helps. if that's what happens at the end of the season in the SEC tournament, I don't think it's something that we're going to be like, oh, this is horrible. They're not going to, because we saw what they did last year coming off that loss early in the tournament. So you can turn a negative into a positive there if that's what ends up happening.
I think it helped you last year. Genuinely, we said that before.
It's a weird
the SEC
thing.
Tournament
It's a weird thing to say because it's not like you're going to go not play and not compete and not try to win the game, right? But it does help, especially if you don't have that much depth.
It genuinely, I think it worked in Tennessee's favor last year. You had fresher legs. Barnes has been kind of notorious for running his teams into the ground. He makes them practice so hard. Obviously, they play super hard during every game that they go out and play. And by the end of the season, sometimes they are worn down a little bit, which is people have theorized that's why he struggles in March.
Yeah. It's a legitimate thing. I think that
absolutely.
Who knows? Who knows? It's impossible to prove either way, but it does feel like a legitimate thing where maybe I don't know. It's tough as a coach because you don't want to take your foot off the gas. It's just a really hard balance to find, and hopefully he can find that this year.
I hope so, but I agree with Elias and Victor. They both say would be thrilled with a 2 seed. I would rather get a 2 seed in a favorable region than a 1 seed out west. Because I think you're looking at Auburn's probably number 1 overall.
That so 1 seed could be overrated.
Yes, it absolutely can be. We'll see how everything plays out. You got to go beat Kentucky. You got to go beat Florida. You got to go. It's an absolute just murderer's row when it comes to the SEC this season. You got to get through that. But you have the pieces there. Lanier steps up. Gainey continues to step up. Gainey's playing better than I ever thought he probably would be in his career at Tennessee this season.
Him fouling out didn't help against Auburn.
No, that was really tough because, frankly, he would have been the guy I would have been given the ball to on that final possession. Go Lanier, they're going to key in on. Zakai is an okay 3-point shooter, but not great. Go to Gainey. That would have been my thing. And they, such is life. So you couldn't beat Bruce. And as sick as that makes me, I think you actually do. You look better for what happened on Saturday, as crazy that is. But yeah.
It's better than the Florida game. You come out of that game like you did the Florida game, and you're like, okay, this team cannot, perform in these environments. You performed. They did too. And they, the shot didn't go down, and they got it.
David says guys are getting too many minutes. The transfer from Hofstra, Darlinson Dubar, played 1 minute, and he averaged 18 points a game at Hofstra. I think. Oh, David actually follows it up with what I was about to say. He said, "Is Dubar not playing defense?" I've heard that's what Barnes' main squabble is with Dubar. I think he's not the smartest dude with the basketball in his hands on the offensive end either. But also, when he's playing well, he can win you a basketball game like he did at Texas. So there's a little bit of give and take with him. But I do agree you need guys, a Bishop Oswell off the bench to give a breather to these guys. And you cannot have a guy foul out like Gainey did. Cannot. Because you have to put in Bishop Oswell. You don't have the dudes behind them. So that's going to be a fact of life for Tennessee till this season is over. Status update on Lady Vols. Lady Vols 16, South Carolina 15.
Yeah.
7.5 minutes. Yeah.
You're in the fight.
7:55 left in the second quarter. I like that. I like it. Obviously, we'll keep tabs on that. Our show will be over before that game's over.
I saw. I don't know if this was legitimate or not. Just something I saw on social media that South Carolina has something insane 10 McDonald's All-Americans or something on their roster, something like that. It's believable, I think, but I don't know how accurate that is. But that would be insane if so.
I do believe that Kim's current recruiting class all ended up being high school All-Americans. So you got good players coming in too. 18-15. Lady Vols just scored. So I look kind of like with Heupel's system. where I look in those early seasons, 2021, when you were better, but still not what you ended up being in 22, and you kind of went, man, if you got some good players in this system, look out, boy. I look at the way the Kim plays specifically. She's got to get some players that can rebound. They really, really struggle to rebound. I mean, they gave up. It was like 22 offensive rebounds to Texas or something.
Yeah, that loses you a game every time.
Brutal. So, and here, I mean, against South Carolina, that's just going to be exponentially worse potentially. So, but they're hanging in so far. We'll see. Now, let's switch. Even though basketball is going on live here, let's switch to a little bit of football. There was some news today, a recruiting loss, but in the past week, you also had a transfer portal win. Let's discuss it all after I tell you about Farm Bureau Health Plans. Farm Bureau has been serving Tennesseans for over 75 years. Much has changed in Tennessee over the years, but some has stayed the same. Farm Bureau Health Plans has always valued personal relationships, especially when it comes to good health and good service. Plan on Farm Bureau for health, dental, and vision. For better coverage, better rates, and better service, go to fbhp.com/ATOZ or walk into one of their 200-plus locations across the state of Tennessee. That is fbhp.com/ATOZ. Farm Bureau Health Plans. Big thanks to them. So on to football. There hasn't been a whole lot going on, but there was one good piece of news last week. We mentioned this offhand, I think, during last week's show because it was being rumored even at that point. But Sam Pendleton, inside offensive lineman from Notre Dame, picks Tennessee. It kind of seemed that way sort of from the second he announced he was going to transfer. It was one of those situations where I think it was sort of like there was no contact from anybody except he's somehow leaning Tennessee already. Like it was one of those situations. Not saying Tennessee tampered or anything with this kid. No accusations here. And if they did, good. But it was one of those situations. I think this is actually really big. If he's good, supposedly played center for Notre Dame. He was not the starting center like in the national championship, but has played some center. You're kind of looking for a guy there. Worst case scenario, maybe one of these guard positions. What do you think about this pickup, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, it's huge. You needed offensive linemen. We still don't know the Andrej Karic situation and if he's going to come back or not. Who knows with the NCAA? It could be next October before we get an answer on that. But you had the guy from Arizona penciled in, so you needed at least another guard or center somewhere in the interior. We don't know how the center position is going to look yet. I think Satterwhite, I think everybody kind of assumes he might end up being the center. We'll see. Yep. It's nice to have, though, Pendleton as an option if that works out or if you need him there. You said he was the backup center towards the end of the year. He repped there in spring last year at Notre Dame. So he's practiced there. He knows what the position's about, but still playing that in Josh Heupel's offense. There's a lot. You go from Notre Dame's offense to Tennessee's offense. It's a big change. So there's going to be an adjustment period for him either way. And that's kind of been true of some of these offensive linemen that have transferred in that we've seen. And that's the part that makes me a little nervous because you're going to count on him to be a starter. Not saying he can't go from day one, be the guy, but in the past we have seen Karic struggle a little bit in year one before really coming on in year two. Hoping Lance Hurd makes a huge jump from, year one to year two with Tennessee, where last year he struggled quite a bit, but he was injured. He missed some time. There's a lot of different variables there. But either way, as a guy that you really had to get, you had to have somebody. It was nice the way it worked out because this time of year, not many portal options left. Spring semester starting. It's running out of time to get somebody in to go through spring practice, and that's the key. Is you really want these guys that you get to go through spring practice. So getting him now and not having to go scramble and try to find somebody after spring practice, and then try to get them up to speed next fall to play in September. That would be tough. Borderline not possible. Type situation. So it was a big pickup and. It's the conversation we've been having now for 2 years at least. When are we going to see some of these high school offensive linemen that you've recruited? I know David Sanders is penciled in at right tackle, but he's going to He seems like kind of a transcendent type player, like first round draft pick type talent. I don't know how much you got to coach that guy. I mean, you got to coach him, of course, but he's going to be a lot more ready than a lot of these guys. But when are we going to see some of these offensive linemen, some of these high 3-star, 4-star guys that you get? Need to see them start playing. Bennett Warren, for example. I mean, that's a pretty highly rated guy. Is he going to get a chance? Because look, if Bennett Warren doesn't play in 2025, and you're going to have to say, well, is Lance Hurd coming back? I don't know. David Sanders will be a sophomore. He'll be back. Hopefully you don't have to deal with any portal stuff there. I mean, you lose these offensive linemen. And you don't have long at all to convince these guys to stay around. It's like Addison Nichols. That would be a nice guy to have on the roster for depth. I mean, I feel like, like a Dane Davis type guy. I think he's probably a better player than Dane Davis. He started at Arkansas. He's going to start at SMU where he's transferred. Now he's played center. That's the type of guy that you need on the roster, but it's like impossible to keep those guys now because if they don't play within the first 2 years, they're gone. And I don't know, maybe other programs are having these same problems and we just don't see it as much because we're so locked in on Tennessee and we're not looking at the depth charts of all these other teams. But it is a weird dynamic with the offensive line. I think more than any other position in college football right now, so maybe quarterback, that is the hardest room to actually build any sort of depth. Like everything we saw on the defensive line last year, how deep Tennessee was on that side of the ball in the trenches, it's impossible, it feels like, to do that on the offensive side of the ball at this point. So I know Glenn Ellerby's, taking quite a bit of criticism, and I understand that. You want to see that offensive line play better, but it's also a tough gig, I think, right now to be an offensive line coach in the SEC.
You do still have, I forgot about this guy. I'm just looking through. Sham Umarov.
Yeah.
Was a 4-star guy. I mean, there are options there, and exactly to your point, hello, Glenn Ellerby, where are your guys that you're supposed to be developing? I mean, this will be Umarov's 3rd year. I think he'll technically be a sophomore, but yeah, hello, somebody. Let's have some guys step up. And to that point, David Sanders kind of concerns me. Where I go like, am I just going to trust that this kid's going to be excellent right off the bat?
I think we have to.
I think he will eventually be excellent. I mean, you just look at his physical build. That dude's a freak. But who was it for the guy that Tennessee was in on that ended up playing at Colorado?
Oh, Jordan Seaton.
Jordan Seaton. I mean, yeah, he had a rough start there at Colorado. Ended up having a nice finish to the season.
It's also the Big 12. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not the SEC.
I mean, you got Georgia game 3 coming up.
Yeah. Oh, God, I didn't think about that. It's
going to be a trial by fire.
Yeah.
And so you better be ready. You better be ready quick. So we'll see how that goes. But
Syracuse game 1 is no, that's a game that Tennessee should win. Is going to be favored in, and especially with Kyle McCord going pro, they're going to be breaking in new quarterback. Goodness. I mean, I feel like that's a game Tennessee's going to win. Maybe it's a good thing they're playing a really good, not really good, but a much better team than like a Chattanooga in the first game. Maybe they need that to kind of get going out of the gate. But that'll be a tough test for some of those true freshmen that are, like a David Sanders or even Mike Matthews, who's going to be kind of like, okay, you're the guy now. This is what you wanted. You go out there and prove it from day one. I mean, that won't be just throw the ball down the field and catch it like you did against Chattanooga or Kent State.
No. You got to go into that one. I mean, so we'll see exactly how that goes. Still an exciting pickup, but still a position that I am skeptical about. We'll assess as we get closer to the season. But you had other news, 2026 4-star offensive lineman Brandon Anderson decommits from Tennessee. The talking points around this, at least from what I saw, were that he had been really picking up steam just around his profile, just, more offers, teams getting a little more excited about him as a prospect. And so he's kind of opening back up saying like, okay, well, now that I'm, a little more highly sought after, I'll go and probably re-enter the market. So that's not crazy to do, but just in this moment, obviously you don't want to lose anybody. That's not great. And obviously you're going to need offensive linemen in the future. We're seeing right now why that can be a problem if you don't. So, not amazing, but I don't know. How'd you feel about this one, Zach?
Yeah, I mean it's just the new world of recruiting. I think there's a lot of different factors there. To the previous conversation we had about Glenn Ellerby, I think it's really easy to recruit against Tennessee in high school recruiting with offensive linemen at this point because not everybody's going to buy what you're selling, but it's easy to tell a kid like, hey, you can go there, you can sign there, they'll give you a nice NIL check, but they're going to recruit over you. They're going to sign somebody out of the portal to play your position. You might be a junior before you get a shot. So that's part of it. NIL, like I said, that can always be part of it. And to your point, if you're picking up steam in the recruiting process, you're becoming a more coveted player, the market's a little more competitive, and you say, hey, maybe I can go out there and get a better situation, more money, or use it to get more money from Tennessee. I think Tennessee's still in this fight. They could still end up landing this kid and signing him. I don't think they're going to stop recruiting him, but obviously it's going to be a little more competitive. That's the one thing about the NIL in high school recruiting that I would like to know the answer to, because you do see these things happen from time to time where a 4-star, 5-star player even commits. I can't remember when this kid committed back. I think it was in October, right after the Alabama game.
The Alabama game.
Yeah.
Yep.
So he'd been committed a couple of months, but even kids that were committed in like August, July, you see from other programs that they decommit, and it's, what did they agree to NIL wise? What happens there? How binding? Obviously, it's not very binding at all. What's that process look like? If you decommit, you're like, okay, we're going to pay you $200,000 to commit here, just a number. Well, you agree to that, then you decommit, halfway through the recruiting cycle. They continue to recruit you. Is it the same offer? I mean, how does that change? How does that impact the rest of your class? It's tough to manage all of that, I imagine. But that's, and I imagine with every kid it's different because you got different people in your ear. You got some parents, coaches, handlers, agents, all kinds of different factors coming in there telling you different things, what you should and shouldn't do. I don't know. I mean, it feels like that's the kind of situation here, though. A combination of kind of some negative recruiting and NIL, and how can I leverage this into a better deal for myself?
As we were talking about, 3-ish weeks ago on here, I would love to see an NIL deal. Show me the contract. How is this stuff written up? Because, how does a decommit work right now with NIL? Lai says, I would love to have some clear idea of how wide the spread is in value of offers to individual players from various teams. Yeah, if you're leaving Tennessee, what offer from wherever he ends up going, we don't know. But there's so much to all of that. And now you're hearing Ohio State had to spend, $20-25 million on their current team. And they're going to have to take that up to 35 this season. Like, what's it going to take? When you have Jeremiah Smith and Cardinal Tate decides to return. They had to drop a bag on that dude. Why would he not just go to Oregon? You heard the rumor that Oregon was around, snooping around with Cardinal Tate. What did they have to give him?
Was it On Three? Pete Nakos or one of those said that he was commanding $1 million in NIL. Is that to transfer? Is that to return? You got to go over that. And then Jeremiah Smith, I mean, multiple millions, I imagine. Yeah, that is, it's insane numbers being thrown around, and it is growing quickly. Like from where we started, that's what annoys me about Nico's NIL deal. And every time Dennis Dodd from CBS Sports or one of those guys talks about Nico, they have to like throw in a little tidbit about his NIL deal. And I know it's because he was like one of the first public examples where we had some details on it. I understand that, but that deal is nothing compared to what quarterbacks are getting now. I mean, that's a bargain. That's a heck of a bargain. Kid took you to the playoff, and Heupel probably doesn't get enough credit for this. The kid took, whatever you think of him in his development, that's a whole nother conversation we've had a couple of times. took you to the playoff, and I know there was like the little murmurs and stuff there towards the end of the portal closing, but nothing ever serious happened there with Nico, and all those rumors are just rumors. You kept him pretty easily, it seemed like. There was never really any danger of him leaving. That deal's a bargain compared to what, I mean, that was just like 2 years ago that he signed. And you're seeing quarterbacks getting $5 million, $6 million to play a year. That is nuts. Like, what's it going to be in 2 years? Because you're just going to, these programs, they have to have a quarterback. You know,
yeah.
If you're Georgia, if you're Alabama, Georgia wanted to keep Carson Beck. I mean, they would have kept him, and he went to Miami. It's hard to keep quarterbacks. So you're competing against other big-time programs for quarterbacks. You're going to pay whatever you got to pay to get that guy over Alabama, and that's just going to keep escalating. I mean, where does it end?
Right. I said this on the show last week. We were talking about Carnell Tate, and somebody in the comments said, Kyle said they're saying he got paid $2 million to stay at Ohio State. Tate did. What's Jeremiah Smith fetching? He's got to be going, excuse me, if he's getting $2 million, let's pay up, boys. Hello?
I mean,
time to write the check.
Oregon has unlimited money. Why would you not just be like, hey, here's $10 million?
Yeah.
Come play out here.
You have Michigan right now with Larry Ellison money, apparently. Larry Ellison and Dave Portnoy money. And it's Tennessee. It's always kind of been the Haslams, the Dish Network guy, the these and that. But, I mentioned this at the top of the show, kind of how I wanted to take this conversation. But there's a ton of money that flows through Tennessee sports. So much money. Millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars flows through Tennessee athletics. But there's still, it's a finite amount of money, though. Still, at the end of the day, it does run out at a certain point, even though Tennessee is one of the biggest players in the space. Like, there is only going to be so much of an appetite. The appetite is huge, but it's only going to be so much at a certain point. And if you're having to spend $30 million to build a championship football team, what does that leave anybody else? Because Danny White obviously has this huge initiative of everything school, everything school, everything school. We got to win a national championship in something every however many years. He kind of set that out at the beginning of his time here. And hey, you got that in baseball, but like baseball's commanding money, especially now. You're dabbling in the best dudes in the sport right now, out of the transfer portal and in high school recruiting. You are consistently number one, number two recruiting class in America in baseball. Basketball. So Chaz Lanier, it's one of the top transfers out of this class coming in. And what's the number now to quote unquote have a everything school? $50 million a year? Like, that's a huge sum of money for just your payroll it's not just your payroll. You got to pay your coaches. Tim Banks is making $2.15 million now. So he's making 2.15. If you're asking me, I don't know who brokered that deal, but congratulations to Tim Banks' agent. But that's kind of a different conversation.
Well, you got to do it though, because it's like, where else?
You do?
Yeah.
He has options.
And dudes are getting stolen. The Ohio State DC leaving. He went to Penn State. Huge get for them. What the heck? Huge get. But how? That's crazy to me that you leave that program to go play for the guy that you left the guy that couldn't win the game till he did. Now you're going to go work for the guy that really can't win the big game.
Yes. Like, never has been able to win the big game. And it really is a wild, wild environment. And on this top end talent, like, I think on the lower end, a lot of that's going to get ironed out because you're going to have to start, shaving off some stuff. And you got to go, hey, you're a 4-star tight end. We'd love to have you. Sorry, you're not going to get $1 million here. Like, there is going to be stuff like that. But on this top end talent for an Oregon that's extremely determined, for an Ohio State that has to keep a Jeremiah Smith, for an Alabama, for a Tennessee, for whoever that's going to vie for 5-star players. Yeah, what is it? 50, 60 million bucks? Then you got to pay your staff and you got to pay your admin and all these other people too. Like,
And you're
there's
making all these stadium improvements every single
yes,
year, seemingly on top of it.
that's it. Well, and the stadium improvements have almost always been kind of a meme where you're like, oh, college football is a quote unquote non-profit, but of course everything goes to the stadiums and the locker rooms and the coaches' salaries and all of these things because it's, you got to spend it somewhere. And now you know where you're spending it now. This is going straight to the players. And this is more out of control than I ever thought it would be. I was and still am extremely excited that players get to find their market value. I think that's amazing. That's the way that it should have been. You wouldn't have to be going through this pain if players would have been getting paid 30 years ago, starting all the way back then. This would have already been ironed out. You would have had it figured out by now. But instead, you're seeing the insane revolution on the front end of players getting paid. And this is as wild as I thought it was going to be. I mean, this is crazy. And to be in everything school and basketball and baseball and women's basketball and softball and everything that Tennessee's good at right now, I don't know. Where's it coming from?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's tough to think that it's sustainable because your only two programs really making money are football and basketball. I mean, the national championship team in baseball lost money.
Yeah.
And your coach is highly paid. I mean, I love it. I'm a baseball guy. I love it. I'm happy that it is that way, but it is tough to imagine it's sustainable. And the Lady Vols, I mean, you make that hire, you see where Danny White wants that to go, and he should. Look, if anything needs to be back, restored to its glory, it's that program. So I'm happy that that's happening, but I'm with you. I don't know how sustainable it is because it's every single year you have to do this, and it just keeps growing. How many other programs are trying to be everything schools like this? Like Texas, maybe,
Yep.
Florida, I would say.
You always see like Stanford up at the top of everything, but of course they win in like women's field hockey or whatever.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're talking like football, basketball, baseball, women's basketball, softball, those sports that you're watching
Florida,
on
Texas.
ESPN. Yeah, there's only a handful because almost every one of those other programs, it's like, well, Georgia's not probably putting those resources into baseball, I guess they are to some extent. They had a really good player, best player in the country last year, one of the best players in the country. But basketball, they get up there every now and then like they have this year, but not consistently where like Tennessee's trying to stay in the top 5 or top 10 every single year. And Ohio State, like they don't have the baseball prowess that Tennessee, like they don't have that type of program there. They're not trying to stay at this top level in every single sport. Like I'm not saying they're completely ignoring those sports, but to your point, the investment you're making to try to go win a championship in those sports, you have to go spend big money to even have a chance at this point. Like you can't, there aren't going to be Cinderellas, I don't think, that don't spend that money and win. I just, because you got to have the best players. Like you've got to have the talent, and it takes a lot of money.
Well, and I could see there's going to be some interesting things that shake out. Like Vandy has some really rich alumni. A lot of them, because obviously it's a very highly considered school.
That's why Texas.
And
I figure Texas is the one that can afford it.
Yes. Like, do you get schools coming out of the woodwork? Texas, I guess I would expect, but do you get does Duke? I would say if they put everything into basketball, there's no way that they don't have alumni with money coming out of their ears. They could just drill into NIL to get a Cooper flag year in and year out, always. And what's the football version of that? Like a smaller school? It's not going to be Vandy.
Basketball's so weird. I think the thing with Duke too is that it's not just like the school having to say, I'm going to pay you $1 million. You go to Duke, where that's just such a historic program. It feels like there's just a lot of doors that are going to be open for you no matter what. And I think that's what Lincoln Riley thought when he left Oklahoma and went to USC. It's Hollywood, it's LA. He thought he was getting ahead of this. And I don't think the appetite is there that he necessarily thought was going to be there for this new era. And it's just not going the way he saw it going. But I think that was, and I don't fault him for thinking that, because, when it first happened, it's like, oh yeah, LA, Hollywood, plenty of money out there. Like you can go buy whatever you need out there, but it's just not that easy, as we're seeing.
It's a pro sports town. They're just not.
Yeah.
Way more than college. It's a pro sports city. But who knows exactly what kind of shape it takes, but it's it's getting crazy out there. So batten down the hatches, do what you can, and start. Hopefully Tennessee has hired some good fundraisers, because you're going to need them in this current age. I mean, you can talk up a collective all you want. Hey, give your monthly subscription to, you could have 10,000 people sign up at $5 or $10 a month. That's not where the bulk of the money is.
You've just bought a long snapper. Congratulations.
Exactly.
I did hear, I'm not going to say who, where, or what school, but I did hear of a punter, and it was like $100,000 is what he got to stay. Good punter, $100,000. It's not. It's all, and that's not every school. Not every school's doing that too. I should point that out. That's not like the standard, but that was at a Power 4 school that wasn't like a major national championship contender. So that's insane.
Show me the P&L. I want to see. Does that even exist? Do financial statements exist for what we're seeing right now? Like, could I see a balance sheet for this NIL activity?
I imagine the IRS, if they wanted to be pretty busy the last 2 years with NIL deals, and there's a lot of new gray areas there that I'm sure are being exploited, that they've probably got a whole new department just dedicated to that.
It is crazy, because there's no guardrails. I mean, just, oh man. That's it. I think that's a show. You got anything else, Zach, for the folks at home before we bounce out of here?
No, I'm just depressed by how much money it costs to have a good football team every single year.
Always. And
it's exhausting. It is. I can't imagine the coaches. I mean, I know that they coach because they love coaching and making an impact and winning games, but this part of it, it's a necessary, I want to say evil, because I'm like you, the players deserve it, but the way that it's happening, where it's just free agency without contracts, really. I mean, just swipe somebody whenever. It'd be like, the Dodgers want to go get Aaron Judge at the end of the season, even though he's got a supposed 10-year deal, and they just bring him on over and put him beside their other 50 players that are making billions of dollars. That was what it would be like, and that would be so insane to think about. And that's what you're going up against. You don't know. Ohio State won a national championship, and they had to convince their best players to come back.
That is all you need to say right there. It's just, like I said, I was all for this, and I knew it was going to be a Wild West. I knew there was going to be pain on this front end. I didn't know that it was going to be taken to quarterbacks making $5 million and wide receivers making $2 million. Wide receivers who aren't even your number one wide receiver making $2 million. Ah, what a time to be alive. Plenty to talk about, though.
Yeah.
Plenty of content for us to get out there. Yeah, like I said, that's the show. Charlie Burris, Zach Reagan. This is the Big Orange Podcast. Thank you to everybody who tuned in. Mr. Jones, Kyle, Elias, all of everybody that tuned in tonight. We got, just saw this, Chad Morris. You think is that the Chad Morris of Arkansas coaching fame?
Offensive, old Dabo's offensive coordinator, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Come tell us what you've heard about NIL.
Yeah, he might know. Okay. Thank you again for watching. We couldn't do it without you. We truly appreciate it. I think that's it. We will talk to y'all next week.
See you guys later.